What's up, you beautiful bastards? Hope you're having a fantastic Tuesday. Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show, and let's just jump into it. And the first thing we're going to talk about today, just the story selection makes me wonder, why does my show ever go through states of monetization trouble? Let's talk about race and gender. It's two stories. The first one starts in Toronto. In May of 2014, Emil Wickham and three friends went to celebrate his birthday at Hong Shing Chinese restaurant in Toronto, but after they ordered the meal, the group was informed by staff that they would be required to pay before they ate. They were told this was a policy that applied to all the patrons, but when Wickham questioned other customers about whether they had to do this, he found that no one else in the restaurant had to. They also realized that they were the only black diners in the restaurant. And so when the server later returned to the table, Wickham and his friends questioned him about the policy. And at that point, the server reportedly admitted that they were the only ones in the restaurant who had prepaid. Then that waiter and other staff asked whether Wickham and his friends wanted a refund. They took their money, they left the restaurant. Wickham eventually lodges a complaint with the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario. It's a governmental board that resolves discrimination and harassment claims. And in his complaint, he alleges that he and his friends have been racially profiled by the staff at Hong Shing. And nearly 4 years after this incident, the Human Rights Tribunal ruled that yes, the restaurant had in fact discriminated against the group, concluding that the restaurant staff had violated Section 1 of the province's Human Rights Code, which guarantees equal treatment when accessing goods, services, and facilities. Writing, in essence, the applicant was presumed to be a potential thief in waiting despite any evidence to that effect. His mere presence as a black man in a restaurant was presumed to be sufficient evidence of his presumed propensity to engage in criminal behavior. At its core, racial profiling is a form of shorthand that enables the perpetrator of the behavior to assume certain facts and ignore others. And while the restaurant employees did not attend this hearing, a lawyer for the company did, and they argued that this prepayment policy was for people that weren't regulars, saying because of its location, the restaurant attracts something of a transient crowd. And unfortunately, it was very common in the past that customers, quote, dine and dash, adding there was never any intent to discriminate against the applicants. All customers who are not known to be regulars are treated the same way. But that explanation was dismissed because reportedly there was no evidence such a policy actually existed. There was no evidence that other patrons that were there that night were regulars, or that Wickham's party was advised of the policy in advance. And so the restaurant has been ordered to pay Wickham $10,000 in damages. And in response to this decision, the owner of the restaurant, Colin Lee, issued a statement saying he was deeply concerned about the situation, noting this took place 4 years ago when the restaurant was under different management, but also noting that this outcome is under legal appeal. And there are two things here. One, I just wanted to talk about this story in general on its own, but it also kind of connects to a second story. Like with most any story, I like to give my opinion, my own personal takeaway, just to throw it out there into the world, also so people can use it or disagree with it. But a thing that I've seen more and more and more is people telling me that I need to shut up because I'm a white guy, that I can't really speak on situations like the Chinese dress story that we talked about yesterday, or then in effect this story. It's also a situation I saw actor Zachary Levi, of course the next Shazam, trying to deal with this morning. He put out a tweet about a Vice News article saying, from my perspective, it is a myopic op-ed at best, and an op-ed making egregious, damning, sweeping generalizations of all men at worst. And to a tweet that read, men really shouldn't be leading debates about what is and isn't sexist any more than white people should be leading convos about what is and isn't racist. I'm a huge fan of his, but this is super disappointing. Zachary Levi responded, and with all due respect to you, saying that men can't lead meaningful conversations about sexism, and that white people can't lead meaningful conversations about racism is both sexist and racist. Truth doesn't care about privilege, nor do those who seek it. And that tweet garnered a lot of attention, both positive and negative. He then went on to post a much larger statement, but one of the key points he ends on is he says, I wholeheartedly agree that one should never be silenced based on their gender or skin color. I'm merely asking for that same right to be afforded to me. I may be white, and I may be a man, but I am first and foremost a human being seeking truth with all my heart and trying to make the world a little better than when I came into it for everyone. And because I've kind of seen how this argument can often play out, where you have one side saying, well, you can't be racist against white people because they're not a minority, that you can't be sexist against men because they have the power, rather than arguing about the specific words being used. I really do want to put the question out there, and it's obvious that you know where I stand. I agree with Zachary Levi that I nor anyone, regardless of their skin color, regardless of their gender, regardless of their whatever, should not be allowed to speak on a topic because of what we are. But I know we have people from all different kinds of backgrounds that watch this show, and so if we can just try to have a conversation about it, I would love to know your thoughts, whether you agree or you disagree. And if you do disagree with me, what benefit do you think that you are providing, that you're creating by keeping someone out of the conversation? To me, the exclusion seems to do more to alienate or push away potential allies, but I'd love to know your thoughts. But from that, I want to share some stuff I love today, and today in Awesome brought to you by the Who Needs Coffee When You Have Dragon Energy shirt, hoodie, and or mug. Kanye, of course, reminded the masses that we're just all dragon energy, and I decided to embrace another thing Kanye loves, capitalism, to help people remember. But also, personally, I like coffee with my dragon energy. So if you want to snag one of those while you can, Link in the description down below. And the first bit of awesome is for you if you want a little more of me in your day. One, there's a bonus video on the vlog today of 3 women in my life roasting me for about 3 minutes while no one realized the camera was on. It's like a little peek behind the curtain. And 2, over on DeFrancoElite.com, I highly recommend you subscribe. It's one of the best ways to support videos like this one, other things that we're creating, and also get exclusive content and gear. Over on DeFranco Elite, one of the new things we are testing is a podcast. There is a brand new one that is around 80 minutes long with myself and the previously mentioned 3 women who are roasting me. And if you want to check that out, I'll link to it directly down below. Then in Trailer Awesome, we got a full trailer for Ant-Man and the Wasp. Also one for a new movie called The Kissing Booth. We had Jimmy Kimmel doing mean tweets with the Avengers. We had Epic Mealtime showing us how to make pizza lasagna. And if you want to see the full versions of everything I just shared, the secret link of the day, anything at all, links as always are in the description down below. Then let's talk about some quickie YouTube news and then some larger stories on the platform. The first, I'm just gonna knock this out of the way. There are a lot of YouTubers in New York right now for the YouTube Creators Summit. Sort of throw it out there before anyone gets needlessly angry. I was invited. Because of my schedule, I was not able to go. On top of doing the show right now, there are a lot of shows that we're trying to create. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff, as well as we are now in the process of moving to our much bigger, awesome studio. So it's just a really important time for us, but hopefully there are other advertiser-unfriendly creators out there to represent for our kind. Then people want me to chime in on Logan Paul, one of the largest creators on the platform right now, announcing that he is no longer vlogging ... daily. And my reaction to that, purely on the business side, is that makes sense. Daily vlogging, while often and inherently just a fun, cool experience, can be very draining. And it can also limit you if you're trying to build a company or expand creatively. It makes sense. While a successful daily vlog is something people would kill for, if not handled correctly, it is something that will kill you. Then there were big YouTube marriages and proposals. Roman Atwood proposed to Britney Smith. PewDiePie proposed to Marzia. Something called a Jack Douglas got married to Erin Breslin. And all of them, I say congratulations. It's beautiful when a couple realizes that they want to involve the government in their love. And I wish all 3 of you a happy future. We also had some YouTubers coming under fire for a sponsorship practice we've seen on the site for a little bit. You had places like the BBC putting out a piece titled "The YouTube Stars Being Paid to Sell Cheating." They refer to more than 250 channels promoting things like EduBirdie. It's one of those places that students can buy essays that they can turn in so they don't have to do the work themselves. And of course, while the writing service itself is not illegal, you can get into a shit ton of trouble if you get exposed for someone else having done your work. One of the people that advertised this service was Adam Sala. Remember him? He can sometimes look different when he's not trying to put out a piece of fake content. But also understand, I'm not trying to completely take the high road here. When I was in high school, I definitely cheated on tests and on certain things. I used things like SparkNotes, which I don't even know if that's a thing anymore. I may or may not have also done some things that resulted in school policy changing about certain devices. But from an ego standpoint, at least, my cheating involved me being involved in it and not just paying someone. That said, it will be interesting to see if anything is actually done or can actually be done about this situation. Because morality aside, if you're just being analytical about the situation, the only person doing something wrong is the student turning in a piece of work that's not their own. The YouTubers are advertising a writing service. The writing service is a writing service, and the student is the one turning in work that is not their own. But I mentioned this story specifically because I'm interested in your thoughts on it. And the last bit of news around the world of YouTube is news that I hate. It's news specifically about John Bain, aka Total Biscuit, aka The Cynical Brit. He's been a popular YouTube and Twitch personality for nearly a decade now. He's well known for his game reviews, his wit when it comes to commentary while playing or just talking about gaming. And back in 2014, he came out with the horrible news that he had full-blown cancer. Tweeting, "Took too long, it's full-blown cancer. Starting chemo soon, then surgeries, doctors optimistic, don't make my mistake, get checked." In 2015, it spread to his liver, at which point he revealed that he had a life expectancy of 3 years. Tweeting, "The cancer in the bowel is gone, but spots have appeared in my liver. They're not operable and there's no cure. Average life expectancy is 2 to 3 years, though there are outliers that live much longer. I fully intend to be the outlier. I intend to beat it for as long as possible." And he has held on that promise of being an outlier, holding out. During the entire ordeal, he has put out quality content, even expanded the type of content that he puts out. But of course, as time has gone on, the scheduling has been understandably less than consistent. And we've gotten bits of new information. On April 18th, he wrote, "So hospitalized, took them a lot of medicine to get the pain managed. We now know the cause, unfortunately, which is spread of the disease, putting pressure on my spine. Anyway, means chemo doesn't work anymore. Only options left are very poor ones, so I'm moving straight into a clinical trial I am eligible for. Won't be any quit here while I still have options to try." Which then brings us to yesterday's very long update, which I'll try to hit on the main points, but if you want to read the full thing, I'll link to it down below. Writing, "My body has become resistant to all forms of chemotherapy, according to my oncologist. 46 chemo treatments, 138 days plugged into a pump. Let nobody ever say I wasn't stubborn. Unfortunately, this was followed up a couple of days later with some more bad news. My liver is failing and its effectiveness has lowered past the point where the clinical trials I had been offered would take me on. Yes, apparently there are things that are too dangerous for even the terminal." Then going on to say the new focus will be pain management, saying it's high priority so that my quality of life can improve. Also noting that it would be his last health update. He then goes on to say that he's going into semi-retirement. He's retiring as a game critic, noting he's under too much medication that messes with his thinking and that his schedule is all over the place to get it out on time. But at the same time, he said he's not done with YouTube or Twitch. Writing, "Bloke's gotta make a living. I have a family to consider, and there's no such thing as too much when it comes to what I leave them when I go out kicking and screaming." He also mentions that his podcast will continue, although it will be a trimmed down version. And just in general, I was blown away by his composure. And I'm not gonna close this out like I sometimes do with other stories that are kind of hard for people to digest. Talking about the emotions of the situation, John Boehner is a very matter-of-fact, blunt guy. One, John, you once joked that your oncologist told you that things could only get worse in one other way, but luckily, that has still not happened. Congratulations. And two, John, if you're the kind of guy that I think you are, you probably downplay a lot, but you should know that you are a pioneer in this space. There are people today doing what they love because you inspired them by doing what you do. There are people doing what they want today because you opened doors by just doing what you did. To me and many others, you are a BAMF, and that's where I'm gonna leave this one. And then let's talk about this President Trump Robert Mueller leak situation. So reportedly, Robert Mueller's team told Donald Trump's lawyers what questions they would like to ask the president. And somehow the New York Times gets a hold of them and they publish a list of over 40 questions. Now, we're not gonna be able to fully cover all the questions, so I'll link to the full list down below. Also, a note, some of the questions the Times reported aren't verbatim to Mueller's list, the outlet's saying that they condensed some of the questions. And to simplify the situation, the questions essentially fall into 4 categories. 1, questions related to Michael Flynn, the former National Security Advisor. 2, questions related to James Comey, the former FBI Director. 3, questions related to Attorney General Jeff Sessions. And 4, questions related to campaign coordination with Russia. Now, before diving deeper into these questions, it's also important to mention that President Trump did tweet about this leak this morning, writing, "So disgraceful that the questions concerning the Russian witch hunt were leaked to the media. No questions on collusion. Oh, I see, you have a made-up, phony crime, collusion that never existed, and an investigation begun with illegally leaked classified information. Nice." Later adding, "It would seem very hard to obstruct justice for a crime that never happened. Witch hunt." And there are a few things there that we need to talk about more, and also some that just aren't right. As far as the who leaked the information, that's something we'll touch on in a few minutes. 2, regarding there being no questions about collusion, literally one of the questions reads, "What knowledge did you have of any outreach by your campaign, including by Paul Manafort, to Russia about potential assistance to the campaign?" And that's a very notable question because Paul Manafort has had a slew of charges pressed against him, but none have related to Russia so far. But that might be changing. A court filing last month shows that Mueller wanted to expand his inquiry into allegations that Manafort, quote, "committed a crime or crimes by colluding with Russian government officials." There was also a filing shortly before that one that described a Manafort business associate by the name of Konstantin Kilimnik as having ongoing ties to Russian intelligence during the 2016 campaign. And so we now have this question that shows that Mueller might have more evidence about possible collusion. And all that is a big deal, of course, because Paul Manafort was Donald Trump's former campaign chairman. And 3, we should talk about Donald Trump saying that it'd be very hard to obstruct justice when essentially there was no crime. And to that I would say, A, we don't know if there was no crime, that's why there's an investigation. And B, Mr. President, no, you're wrong. According to federal laws, justice can be obstructed when someone knowingly interferes with an ongoing investigation. And Mr. President, with you having the position you are in, it would not be very hard to obstruct justice. It would be very stupid to obstruct justice, especially if no crime happened. But those are 2 different situations. So now that we have that knocked out, let's talk about the questions about Michael Flynn. The Times providing one that read, "How was the decision made to fire Mr. Flynn on February 13th, 2017? In late 2017, Trump said that he fired former National Security Director Michael Flynn because he had lied to the Vice President and the FBI. Also in December, Trump tweeted, "I had to fire General Flynn because he lied to the Vice President and the FBI. He's pled guilty to those lies. It is a shame because his actions during the transition were lawful. There was nothing to hide." And shortly after Flynn was fired, former FBI Director James Comey said that Trump came to him to ask for leniency on Flynn. And if it turns out that's true, that could be a huge problem for Trump. If the president wanted to protect Flynn, it could potentially be obstruction of justice. And it's also important to remember that one of Trump's former lawyers said that the president didn't write that tweet. John Dowd said he personally sent that tweet from Trump's account. And so ultimately this question is probably Mueller trying to figure out Trump's version of how and why Flynn was fired. And it's also an interesting question because the White House never really fully explained why officials waited so long to fire Flynn after learning about the lie. Then there was another question dealing with an interview Trump gave to Lester Holt in May of last year. This was one of the main questions around Comey. The Times reporting that Mueller allegedly wanted to ask Trump, "What did you mean in your interview with Lester Holt about Mr. Comey and Russia?" If you don't remember, in that interview, Trump said he had been thinking about the Russia investigation when he fired Comey.
And in fact, when I decided to just do it, I said to myself, I said, this Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story. It's an excuse by the Democrats for having lost an election that they should have won.
But that interview contradicts other statements the president has made. Just last month, Trump tweeted, "Slippery James Comey, the worst FBI director in history, was not fired because of the phony Russia investigation where, by the way, there was no collusion, except by the Dems." Trump also saying in that NBC interview that he had plans to fire Comey before Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein recommended him to.
Oh, I was going to fire regardless of recommendation.
So there was
He made a recommendation. He's highly respected. Very good guy, very smart guy. The Democrats like him, the Republicans like him. He made a recommendation, but regardless of recommendation, I was going to fire Comey.
But before that interview, the White House cited Rosenstein's recommendation as the reason for Comey's firing. So Mueller's question here is probably an attempt to just get a definitive answer from the president about why he fired Comey. Then, like I said, there were also questions around Sessions. Most notably, did you discuss whether Mr. Sessions would protect you and reference past AGs? This because Trump has allegedly asked for loyalty before from others. But with this question, especially because it's about Sessions, it's interesting considering that most of the time you'd only really get a question like this if the person asking the question already knew the answer. Another question asking, what was the purpose of your May 12th, 2017 tweet? That tweet reading, James Comey better hope there are no tapes of our conversations before he starts leaking to the press. Comey, of course, responded, Lordy, I hope there are tapes. And the White House eventually said that there were no tapes, but Mueller seems to want to know why Trump said this in the first place. There's also another question that focuses on Russian hacking and social media, because, by the way, I mentioned the Paul Manafort question. Once again, I'm not sure what the president was talking about, saying that there was no questions around collusion. There was the Manafort question I previously mentioned. There are these four. There was also during the campaign, what did you know about Russian hacking, use of social media, or other acts aimed at the campaign? That, of course, is a pretty interesting question because Trump has praised the release of hacked Democratic emails and called on Russia, even if it was just a joke to find others. But it's also a notable question because Mueller's investigation also reportedly has evidence that at least one member of Trump's campaign, George Papadopoulos, was told that Russia had obtained compromising emails about Hillary Clinton. And once again, these are notable, interesting questions to me. If you want to see the full list, I'll link to them down below. Now, this brings us to the note that I said we would come back to, and that was who leaked this information. The New York Times said that the list of questions was provided to them by a person outside Trump's legal team. But at the same time, Michael Zeldin, a former assistant to Robert Mueller, said today that the grammatical errors in the questions prove a Trump team member leaked the information.
So I don't see this as a list of written questions that Mueller's office gave to the president. I think these are more notes that the White House has taken, and then they have expanded upon the conversation to write out these as questions, and that's where we are. So I think Jeffrey's right that these are introductory questions that then introduce a lot of sub-questions.
Now that takeaway is interesting for two reasons. One, at the very least, it does appear likely that the source of the questions, not necessarily the leak, but the source of the question, that those came from Trump's legal team. And the lead up to the list of questions being made is something that the New York Times also talked about on their podcast, The Daily.
And what was going on was that Mueller's folks were trying to get Dowd to come along and agree to let Trump do the interview. So what happened was they brought Dowd over to the special counsel's office and they said, look, here are the questions we want to ask. And they started rattling them off. Dowd and the other lawyers there took it down and created this document, these 49 questions.
So based on that, it seems unlikely that it was Mueller's office that would leak this information. And two, this is notable because this morning, President Nixon's White House counsel, John Dean, said if the questions leaked were from a Trump team member, that could be obstruction of justice. Which once again, even if there was no collusion, and I'm not saying that there was collusion, you can still obstruct justice. And so that is where we are right now. It will be very interesting to see what other information, what other fallout comes from this situation. But based on the roller coaster that has been the past 2 years, I imagine more information one way or the other will be coming out soon. And that's where I'm going to end today's show. And remember, if you liked this video, hit that like button. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, make sure you turn on notifications. Also, if you missed yesterday's Philip DeFranco show, you want to catch up, click or tap right there to watch that. Or if you want to watch today's brand new bonus video, which is just 3 women in my life roasting me for 3 minutes, you can click or tap right there to watch that. But that said, of course, as always, my name is Philip DeFranco. You've just been filled in. I love yo faces, and I'll see you tomorrow.